So how is Coach Mitch looking like since taking over the reins for Coach Popovich?
You are Locked On Spurs, your daily San Antonio Spurs podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Spurs right here on the Locked On NBA Network. I'm your host, Jeff Garcia, Spurs writer for Kens 5 San Antonio. Glad to have y'all back and hope y'all are having a great day. I know I am because y'all came to the number one spot for all things San Antonio Spurs. Locked On Spurs. Subscribe wherever you get your favorite podcasts, including iTunes, Spotify, Kens 5 Plus app. You know where to go. Go subscribe right now. Check out the new Locked On Spurs team newsletter. The link is in the description below. Just click on that and go subscribe. It's free. Get that newsletter to pair with this episode of Locked On Spurs and many others. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account. Use code Locked On NBA for $20 off your first purchase. So what are we talking about today, everybody? We're going to be looking at Coach Mitch Johnson. How has he been looking on the sidelines? Is he doing yeoman's work in the absence of Gregg Popovich? Could he possibly be the successor if worse comes to the surface and they need to replace Coach Pop with another coach? Could Mitch be taking the job? And then we'll talk about you guys, Locked On Spurs fan. Coach Mitch Johnson has been the interim head coach, and as of this recording, has guided the team to a 500 record. I believe they're 3-3. So we're going to be discussing pros, cons, his potential future with the team, and so much more with our guest, Rudy Campos, who is filling in today because we had a guest canceled due to illness. And unfortunately, the only way to make it work, we got to do an audio show. But nevertheless, welcome, Rudy, back coming off the bench like Manu Ginobili.
Yeah, the Spurs fans' favorite six-man, Manu Campos, is coming off the bench again.
Manu Campos. I love that. Yeah. Make sure to follow Rudy on X at Sweep the League and check out his show, Sweep the League, on YouTube. He'll brag about that momentarily. So, Rudy, we are here to discuss Coach Mitch. There we go. It's a mouthful. He's been, again, 3-3 since taking over the interim head coach title. As a person, he's a really cool guy, very calm, collected. He just tell you this much, Rudy. Press conferences are a lot easier now with the head coach of the Spurs. So there's that. I appreciate that. But it looks and feels like it's just been status quo. Like the Spurs really haven't missed a beat with Pop's absent and Mitch coming in. What do you think?
I agree with that. With Coach Pop being out for the meantime, Coach Mitch Johnson coming in, you're right. It hasn't really skipped a beat. He's able to get Devin Vassell back, which we've seen Devin's impact for the San Antonio Spurs. And it just kind of seems like the train didn't stop, didn't stall, didn't stop on the tracks and block everybody from driving over the track like it normally does. Just keeps on chugging. And that kind of shows to what Pop and his coaching tree kind of stand for, because Mitch has learned under Pop. Mitch was a coach in Austin as well. So, he's gotten used to the system. He's already been in the system for a few years now. I really didn't expect them to miss a beat. I really expect them just to kind of continue on. The biggest part I thought he would have trouble with was the rotation. But even at that, we're not even seeing that.
No, not at all. And I think Spurs fans are probably going to point to, well, the Spurs, they blew a lead versus Utah. How can that happen? Clippers almost, got one on the Spurs, et cetera, et cetera. But it's not like Pop was having the teams that were blowing leads as well. So it's not just Mitch, but, remember, Pop and the team have not seen the playoffs for seasons now. And last year, how many times did we see the Spurs blow leads? Lots. This year we've seen a few. So you can't even pin that on Mitch. It's not a Mitch thing. It's a team thing as they go into rebuild. Here's the thing also, too, is I think the Spurs players really like being coached by Mitch. Chris Paul told everybody in the media room a couple of days ago that, hey, y'all should have seen the pep talk that Mitch gave us at halftime, to keep us focused. So he looks like he's hitting the buttons the right way. And if anything, I don't know, maybe I should ask him soon. I think if anything he took away from Pop is just building relationships and connecting with the players, because they are very connected to Coach Mitch. And I think that's huge, especially for an interim head coach like Johnson, who may or may not be in San Antonio long term if this is a success and other teams come knocking on the door. I would not be surprised, Rudy, if at the end of the season, fill-in-the-blank NBA team needs a new head coach and they got Mitch way up there.
Yeah, don't be surprised at all. And actually, don't be surprised if, it is with the San Antonio Spurs. I mean, we understand, Pop's going through some stuff and it's health wise, but at the same time, it could be somewhat of a blessing in disguise. We're always trying to figure out who's going to take over for Coach Pop. People wanted Becky Hammond to come back, which we
Yeah.
know she's already a staple in the WNBA. People are mentioning other coaches around the league. Well, why not just grab from the Pop tree already? You saw guys like Budenholzer going to better places.
Yeah.
Other coaches that have gone, Mike Brown, having success too. So staying with Mitch Johnson, who's already got a really good relationship with the players, is probably the best move you can have if they are looking to replace Pop, at head coach. But the one thing you got to remember, we always preach about a player's coach is never a good coach, but that was way back then. In today's league, the players' coaches seem to get through to their players a lot better. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of liking what I'm seeing with Mitch Johnson. I think he can be really aggressive and really, upset and angry when he has to be.
Yeah.
And the days of, just putting players in the doghouse and all that stuff like we've seen in the past probably is not a good way to coach in the NBA these days. But not saying they're soft, but I'm kind of mentioning a little bit towards going that way a little bit. But Coach Johnson has the experience. And I think that's kind of what you're seeing with the Spurs. The train just continues to roll on the tracks. And be nice to see if he can get them above 500.
Mm-hmm.
Does that point everything in the right direction to say, okay, he's going to be our top assistant and probably future head coach of the Spurs?
Yeah, if you need a sign of how much the Spurs look at him as a potential future head coach, or just sticking on the head coaching ranks if they go a different direction, is this. On that bench, on the coaching bench, they have Matt Nielsen, who's been an assistant coach with the Austin Spurs, coaching with Team Australia. He's been on an assistant San Antonio Spurs bench for quite some time. They didn't go with him, they go with Mitch. Then you got Brett Brown, freaking
Mm-hmm.
Brett Brown on the roster, right next to Mitch, guy who coached in Philadelphia, who has coached a generational big man, Embiid, and has experience in that. But yet, instead of going for the veteran coach, Brett Brown, they opted for the late 30-year-old Mitch Johnson. You cannot get any bigger signal that this team is invested in what his potential could be as a head coach moving forward. Rudy, with that.
Yeah, you can't overlook that at all. They've invested a lot in their coaching staff. Brett Brown could have probably been the most obvious choice. He's got the experience. He's a coach, like you said, generational talent in Philadelphia. Everything points to Brett Brown being that guy, but it just shows that they have a lot of confidence in Mitch. What I do love is that he has Brett Brown, right next to him to kind of guide him because Mitch is going to have a lot of questions. They're talking about a guy who's never had an NBA head coaching experience, and who better to have than Brett Brown right next to you? A guy who's had some success, who's been a part of the championship teams of the San Antonio
Mm-hmm.
Spurs. And that's something that I really like with Mitch. And you're right. Don't overlook the fact that, they're sticking with the tree, the guys that they have right now. It's just a really good moment, I think, for Spurs fans to really look at and say, okay, we are kind of seeing the future now. We were a young team. We're still kind of a young team right now. Go with a younger coach, someone that can bring a different environment to the San Antonio Spurs. Yeah, don't overlook it at all. It's really good that they have a lot of good assistant coaches with a lot of experience, not just international. I mean, not just NBA, but international, as you mentioned. So I
Mm.
would say don't overlook this at all.
No, not at all. And to me, that just speaks volumes of what the team sees in Mitch. And look, he was on Team USA. He was a coach. So yeah, it makes all the sense why they would slap interim head coach on Mitch instead of a guy like Brett Brown. And you would think that's the obvious choice. Like, okay, here are your three candidates that you got: Matt Nielsen, Brett Brown, and Mitch Johnson. I think more often than not, Brett Brown. Look at him; he's been there, done that. Who's this young guy? But no, they went with him. Also, too, he got his coaching chops done in Austin with the Austin Spurs, so
Hmm.
he's more familiar with the Spurs system than maybe Brett Brown is. At least as far as in the recent era, Brett Brown comes from the old era of the Spurs. But one thing else that I like too is he's even keel. He comes to those press conferences. If they took a loss, he's not flipping tables and getting mad. He's just very even keel. He's not getting too
Yeah.
high. He's not getting too low. He will give credit where credit is due, and I think a big sign of that. is recently when I talked to him about the team holding on to fourth quarter leads, he didn't mention himself at all. He says, nope. He goes, majority of that credit goes to Chris Paul and Harrison Barnes because they've been in those situations more than I have. That to me is huge sign of that he is a player's coach. He knows that it's the players that get the job done, not him on the court. Yeah, sure, he guides and teaches and molds and communicates and gets on the refs, but he still is not one of the guys putting the ball in the hoop under the pressure when the lights are bright. So for him to do that, I think that speaks volumes for him as far as knowing that it is the players, not the coaches. Also,
you
too.
brought up. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say you brought up something that a lot of people may be overlooking, whether it be media or fans in general, is the player development. He was able to develop players for the Spurs main roster while he was in Austin. And one thing you've got to circle, and if nobody circled it, by all means, go to the programs, go to the box scores, circle it. Since Mitch has actually been filling in for Pop, you've seen the emergence of Stefan Castle. And that goes to Mitch's credit because of his player development in Austin. He's able to trust a guy like Stefan Castle to take over the starting spot. And you've seen it paying in wonders and dividends because Stefan's been playing really, really well for San Antonio since he's been in the starting lineup. But again, not only is it credited to Chris Paul, to the guys helping Stefan, but it's also by Mitch too, but putting him in the situations that he is. So always circle that player development by Mitch Johnson. He's a player's coach, which is really good, but he's also a rookie's coach because he's able to develop guys in Austin. You're seeing it on the main roster right now.
Yeah. He's doing a really good job for technically a rookie head coach, right? And I know he's called interim, but he is a rookie NBA head coach. And one other thing that I do like is his rotations. Is you're starting to see Mamu get more minutes earlier. Under Pop, Mamu was going in garbage time, or if the Spurs were up big or down big, didn't matter, or he'll get spot minutes. Now you're seeing Mamu get more minutes and be part of more of the rotation. I think that's a good thing that Mitch has done. Now, maybe that was trending in that direction before Pop fell ill, but nevertheless, I like that. You're right. You hit one of my takes here was about the Castle point. Yeah, he is kind of blooming more under Mitch. Again, not a knock on Pop. It's just what we see on the court since Mitch has been interim head coach. Also, too, let's not discount this. As much as you were saying that Mitch is doing a good job, he has that support system with him. From Matt Nielsen to Brett Brown to one of the newer head coaches, Kenny Trevino from the Austin Spurs branch. It's almost head coaching by committee, but with Mitch being the final say. Would you say that, Rudy? Was that kind of what we're feeling right now, or is it pretty much Mitch's way?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely coaching by committee. There's no doubt about that at all. Mitch has the final say, obviously, but it stems to Pop too, because when Pop was winning titles, even after that fact, he was still a coaching. It was kind of a coaching by committee type thing, always bouncing stuff off of players, always talking to Brett Brown and the other guys, Budenholzer, just bouncing stuff off left and right. But ultimately, Pop had the final say. But with Mitch, he's taking and absorbing every single thing that all the coaches and even players are telling him. And he's just soaking it up in his brain. And at the end of the day, he's making the best decision for the Spurs. So coaching by committee, 100%. And that's not even a bad thing. That actually shows the trust that he has in his staff and his players.
We're talking with Rudy Campos of Sweep the League. Follow him on X at Sweep the League. Make sure you do that right now. Fun show, really good show, very interactive. And it's one of the only, if not a rare, evening sports talk show in San Antonio. When we get back, we're going to continue talking about Mitch Johnson, then get into your thoughts, Locked On Spurs fans. What are y'all talking about the YouTube page? But first, I want to talk to you about Game Time. And when I talk to you about Game Time, go to gametime.co right now. Game Time is a new feature called Game Time Picks. Makes getting tickets easier for your favorite live events that much better. Game Time filters out the fluff, so you only get incredible deals on great seats. You don't have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets. Hey, Game Time has it all. They have the super deal. They got seats view before you buy. They got curated deals to make it easier to find the best price on great seats. the lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection. You will be pleasantly surprised with this app. Go get it right now. Game time picks. Again, that's a curation that makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater. Hey, they have the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Game Time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It is game time.
This is Emilio Rivera, El Padrino for the Mayans MC. You are listening to Locked On Spurs with Jeff Garcia.
We're back right here on Locked On Spurs with Rudy Campos of Sweep the League. He's on X at Sweep the League, and check out his show, Sweep the League, on YouTube. Make sure you do that right now. We're talking about Coach Mitch Johnson. After Pop, fell ill and has been, taking a leave of absence. On Media Row, we were talking about how come the Spurs didn't tap Rudy Campos to take over. What happened with that, Rudy?
I'm not gonna lie, man. I'm not made for the NBA because I came from the Bobby Knight tree of coaching,
no.
Apparently they tied down the chairs now, so I can't lift them and throw them across the court. So I wouldn't last maybe a game or two. Players can't handle my attitude. There's no doubt.
Yeah. I guess maybe it was the right decision. But we're talking about Coach Mitch and his job since taking over head coaching duties in the absence of Popovich. I kind of put a bow tie in all this. Look, as mentioned earlier, he is a rookie head coach. He's going to make some mistakes. We've seen a few of those already. Rotations, why are you pulling this guy out and, what's going on here. But all in all, not bad. And that is a credit to Popovich for laying down that foundation. What we're seeing right now, we're kind of getting a glimpse of life after Popovich. He is the last remaining piece of the glory days of the Spurs. After that you might say the chapter is over because Timmy, Tony, Manu, and Pop are in the Hall of Fame. But until Pop exits the game officially, he is the last remnant of those glory days of San Antonio Spurs basketball. So what I like about this, we're seeing what it is like for the future of the Spurs once he officially retires or exits the game. And I got to say, if this is the foundations he's leaving, whether it be Mitch Johnson or whoever, it's not a bad foundation. Now, this leads me to ask you, do you think the Spurs will promote within, as we're seeing right now with Mitch Johnson, and keep that Popovich, mentality, motto, foundation for coaching? Because they bring in an outsider, they may want to do their own thing.
Yeah, I would say promote. To be honest, I'm going to be brutally honest here on Locked On Spurs. There's nobody worth a damn out there that you would want to hire as a head coach right now. The only guy that I had circled in tabs was Charles Lee, who's now the head coach of the Charlotte Hornets. Yeah. So he was the only one I ever really spoke out for. But now that he's got his coaching position, there really is nobody out there you would want to bring in. Just hire within. And, Mitch is the guy that probably would get that position if it's available. And I have no problem with it. And I know on Locked On, I'm kind of like the Debbie Downer sometimes, but I will say this. If you had to pick one negative thing on the Mitch Johnson thing right now, it's we don't have enough of coaching, I guess, games to really give him a full grade on a report card yet. And that's kind of like the incomplete part, which it's not a bad thing, but I want to be able to see him coach in a lot of these close games. Does he utilize his timeouts correctly? Does he not necessarily panic under pressure, but does he make the right decision? Does he draw up the right play? Does he, it's these timely decisions that when you want to be a winning organization, you're going to be put in those situations. So I love everything that he's done so far, and it's not anything knock on him at all. I just want to see him in those types of situations to give him that full report card grade. But nonetheless, hire within. Right now, he looks like a really good fit for the Spurs.
Yeah, he might, if it does come down to it and Pop does exit the game, whether it be this season or next season or whenever, depending on his illness that he has. You couldn't think of a better candidate. This could be his training camp. This could be Mitch Johnson's training camp to see, okay, does he have what it takes to take over for Popovich once Popovich calls it a night? So we could be witnessing this right now, but it does feel a little odd. Games do feel different. Mitch is very involved in the game. Not to say Pop isn't, but he's very active. He's getting on the guys. I saw him a couple of times at the games where he's just talking to players where they mess up on the court. So doing a bang up job. So far I'm giving him a solid B plus, only to give him room for improvement. What about you?
If I give him a grade on what we have here, I'm not going to argue with that. I'm at a B plus. When I say B plus, probably 89. So close to an A, very close to an A, because he's doing a really good job. I give him a B plus. I couldn't give him anything lower. Again, the expectations for the season are pretty low already. So with what you're working with, they're exceeding expectation. So B plus is solid with me.
Absolutely. All right. Let Rudy know what you think about his take on Coach Mitch on X at Sweep the League. You let me know over at the Locked On Spurs YouTube page. Just go on YouTube, search Locked On Spurs, subscribe, and take part in the conversation. That's right. We're going to be talking about you guys right now, Locked On Spurs fans, and the comments you're leaving over there. Lots of them. Lots of comments here. People are reacting to Sohan. People are reacting to Wemby. Just a lot. But we cannot pick them all, so we're going to pick two. And let's get things going underway right now. The first one is regarding a recent episode of Locked On Spurs yesterday about some surprises so far in the season. And then yesterday's show, Mike Jimenez, he picked his biggest surprise is the play of Julian Champagnie. Well, we had a comment here about that from Gone Rogue. And this is going to be an interesting topic. Here we go. Champagnie should equals bench. So Gone Rogue is saying, put Champagnie back on the bench. What do you think about that, Rudy? Right now he's starting because they're bringing back Vassell little by little, slowly. I think eventually Vassell will take over the starting spot. Something's going to have to give. Champagnie or Castle, one of those guys is going to go to the bench. But what do you think about Champagnie off the bench once that rotation gets settled in?
I think we had talked about it recently on Locked On, and I'm kind of in agreement that he's probably going to go to the bench. It's hard to send Castle back to the bench, even though I kind of would like that a little bit right now. But it's going to be Julian Champagnie to the bench. The only thing I worry about is because he's playing pretty good right now, the starting five. Does it mess with his confidence level? Yeah. Sometimes if you're a starter and you're doing good, you get to the bench, you understand you're a role player and you understand that you are coming off the bench. But when you have a pretty good start to a season and you get pushed to the bench, you feel like, man, do they not believe in me? You start questioning yourself. I hope that doesn't happen, but Champagnie to the bench is the more likely thing to happen when Devin gets ready to be a starter again.
Yeah, I think Champagnie is for sure one of the early surprises, considering, I didn't see it coming. He's been able to knock down that three, be a floor spacer. I could see why, if the Spurs were to go that route and keep him in the starting unit to open up space for Wemby and the rest of the crew, so be it. Makes sense. But Vassell, that's one of your major guns on the roster there. You got to get him started minutes. And so far, he's embraced the bench role. Again, this is recorded before the Spurs game versus Washington, so don't know if he got the nod. But if he's coming off the bench and he stays there, if he's willing to accept that, look, Keldon accepted it, Manu accepted it. There's precedent set for Vassell if the Spurs decide to keep him coming off the bench. Again, I don't think that's going to happen. I think eventually we'll see Vassell return to the starting five. And I think they'll probably oh man. I think they'll sit Castle. I think they'll sit Castle. I don't know. He's playing great too. Yeah, he's playing great. Hey, we're not done talking about you guys. When we get back, we're going to be discussing more Locked On Spurs fan comments with Rudy Campos of Sweep the League. Follow him on X at Sweep the League right now. Make sure you do that because he turns into the Hulk if you don't give him a reaction or a follow on X. But right now, let's talk about FanDuel. Hey, I want to talk to you about FanDuel. You want to go to FanDuel.com right now Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So much when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You just got to go to FanDuel.com right now. Speaking of FanDuel.com, look, the NBA season is also around the corner. Spurs fans, time to have some fun with your silver and black on the court. The app is very easy to get, very easy to use, user-friendly, very intuitive. Make your picks, 1, 2, 3. Bet on parlays, bet on win spreads, totals. I mean, seriously, you can have so much fun with sports this sports season with FanDuel. Again, America's #1 sports book. You just got to get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed. Yeah, you'll get started with that. And when you place your first $5 bet, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Another reason why you got to go to FanDuel when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Go to FanDuel.com right now, America's #1 sportsbook. We're back right here on Locked On Spurs with Rudy Campos of Sweep the League. Check out his show on YouTube. Just search Sweep the League, subscribe, and have some fun with Rudy and the gang. Talking all things sports, and we're talking about you guys, Locked On Spurs fans. We got one more question before we put a bow tie on this episode of Locked On Spurs. Here we go. This is from Kevin Smith, 4239. He says, whenever teams put small players on Wemby, he just needs to go to the post. Now, that's been a very big topic with Spurs fans right now. Why you got Dylan Brooks on you? What are you doing? You got Lou Dort on you. What are you doing? You got to switch. You got tinier guy. Well, everybody's smaller than Wemby, but smaller guy on you, Wemby, take it to the basket. Why don't you see more of that from Wemby? Why can't he just establish himself in the basket and then just go to work? He towers over 99% of the league. Why is that simple concept not sinking in when we're not seeing Wemby in the post?
Goes back to what he said. Don't limit him to just being a post player, and that's the crappy part about it. I mean, I understand he's taller than 99%, of everybody in the league, and people think, well, you've got Dylan Brooks on you, you've got so and so on you. Well, the mindset has to be like, okay, when I'm coming off a pick and roll, if I have this guy on me, I'm going to back down. I'm going to back him down to the post. Doesn't do that. He stays on the perimeter. Also, keep in center of mind, when you're that tall, center of gravity, when you're low, you're able to push a guy out of the way because you're, at his waist. So he doesn't have the strength, first off. He's getting bulkier, but doesn't have the strength. He's going to be able to be pushed around a lot more by a guy that's a lot smaller than your average center. So, the center, the low part of the gravity there is just pushing him out to the post, pushing him out way into the perimeter. But again, he's got to have the mindset when he has somebody, very small, whether it be a guard or a small forward on him, he's got to just plant himself in the post and just dig deep in there and go to work, like we've all said. But it's the mindset. He has a Kevin Durant mindset that I wish he would get out of, but he probably never would. Now, again, not a knock on him, but until he starts thinking like a big man, he's going to struggle. And that's what we see. Shaq's called it, and people get upset at Shaq, but he's speaking the truth. And I've said the same thing. You've got to be in the post. That's an additional 14 to 16 points a game if you're thinking about it.
Yeah. I think in time, once he gets stronger, you'll see a lot more of that, more of a mixed bag. But Wemby has been turning the corner a bit in the 3 shot, and it is falling a little bit more regularity. So there's that. If anything, I think it's just utilizing his skill set, because if he does draw out like a Brook Lopez or, a Joker, maybe you can take him off the dribble, pick him up fouls. He has the agility and the quickness for that. Maybe that's their plan. We'll see. But I do get frustrated not seeing him utilize that height and length to his advantage, because he has that advantage. And why not use that when you're very close to the rim? And you're starting to see little plays once in a while, them kind of saying, oh, yeah, I am taller than you and I can outreach you, so I'm going to use this against you. But for most of the season, it's kind of been perimeter play. And, man, let me tell you, Rudy, at the Frost, when he's taking threes and he's missing, Spurs fans are chirping. They're like, what are you doing, Wemby? Stop. I mean, you can hear it. I sit close to the baseline bums, my media seat, and they're, Wemby, what are you doing? Stop taking threes. Just screaming their heads off. And Spurs fans near me, same thing, like, stop with the threes, Wemby, you're missing them. So definitely impacting Spurs fans, but they still love Wemby, and I guess as long as they're racking up W's and seeing Wemby do spectacular things, they'll be okay. He is Rudy Campos of Sweep the League. Follow him on X at Sweep the League. Tell us what's going on. You guys got a lot of great interviews lined up, and in the past, what's going on with Sweep?
Yeah, so you've got the coming to the end part of college football. So we're covering all the college football. The top 12 keep coming out for the college football playoffs. We're bringing that to you, covering NFL, covering NBA as much as possible. Added a whole lot more stuff. We've added Sweep Unplugged, which is where we start talking to people not necessarily outside of the sports world, but fitness, authors, musicians, just a lot of stuff. So that's another podcast coming out. Just a whole network of stuff. You got to go to YouTube, search Sweep the League TV, be a subscriber so you don't miss out. We got a lot of prizes we still giving away. People are going to start posting the prizes that they won. So, yeah, we just have too much, Jeff, going on. I'm wearing myself thin here, but it's all for the network, man. All for the network. We got something big coming in 2025. I can't really announce it just yet, but if it comes to fruition, you will be the first. I'll tell you what, I'll break it on Locked On if it comes to fruition.
Please do that. Please do that. I think I might know what it is, but if it is what I think it is, then I'm excited for you and your team and everybody there at Sweep. Again, follow Rudy on X at Sweep League. Do that right now. We'll be back tomorrow talking all things silver and black. And thanks for making Locked On Spurs your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts, iTunes, Spotify. Pick a platform. We are there, including the Kens 5 Plus app and YouTube. And don't forget about that newsletter, Locked On Spurs newsletter. It's right in the description below. Go click on it. Have some fun. It's free. It's a companion piece to Locked On Spurs. So for Rudy Campos, I am Jeff Garcia. We're going to put a lock on this episode of Locked On Spurs.
I see her rolling up, Uber black Cadillac, high heel boots and a sexy body full of tats. Baby's bad, oh baby's hella bad. After her there ain't no coming back. Wanna take a run at that. I think she's feeling me, turn it up a few degrees. My imagination of her body gets the best of me. Oh gosh, she's such a tease, bitten lips, bruised knees. I'm addicted to her, need her touching me, cause she got a bad little waist.